Amen. Amen. It is indeed a blessing for us to be here. Amen. It is now time for our worship. We thank God for you being here, and we thank God for God's presence being with us. Amen. I'm going to ask that you would turn your hymnals to hymn 566. Actually, you can find it in your program. It's actually in your program. Hymn number 566. Woke up this morning with my mind.
Praise the Lord, everybody. Praise the Lord. Come on and put your hands together for Jesus. Come on and put your hands together for Jesus. He woke you up this morning, amen, and he started you on your way, amen. Come on and put your hands together for the Lord. Amen. God, you're worthy to be praised. Lord, we thank you, Lord God. We thank you for your anointing, God. And we certainly thank you for being in this place with us today, Lord God. Amen. Amen. If you have your Bible, turn with me to Psalms 37. And what you found in, say amen. Amen. I'll give everybody a second. Put your mouth and say amen. Amen. And it reads, the steps of a ordered by the Lord. The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord. The Lord, and he delights his way. Go down to 24. Though he fall, he shall be upgirded. Can you guys hear me? Anyway, sorry. Let's go back to 24. Though he fall, he shall not be upgirded, for the Lord upholds him with his right hand. Let's go to 25. And it says, he has been young and now old, yet have I not seen the righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging bread. Amen? How many know that when we're out there, God does not put more on us than we can bear? Amen. So things happen, and you will never see the righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging bread. Because God has sent someone your way to bless you some way. Because there have been times, I can speak for myself, that I didn't know how things were going to add up, but God always stepped in the nick of time. So that's what he means when he says, I've never seen the righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging bread. Amen. Let's bow our heads in prayer. Father God, in the name of Jesus, Lord God, we thank you for this day, God. We thank you for waking us up this morning, God. We thank you for sunlight, God. We thank you that we have the activities of our limbs, God. So, Father, I pray now, God, that you have your way in the Spirit, God. Have your way, Holy Ghost, now, God. Lift everyone now, God, in the name of Jesus. Touch the man of God that's giving the word, God, in the name of Jesus. Give us a fresh, regular word from on high, God, that will feed your people, God. Give us peace, God, in the name of Jesus. And let this be the best week that we've ever seen, Lord God. Father God, I just thank you for what you're doing in this house, God. And it is in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I'm not sure where that feedback is coming from, but we're going to go on down the left. Amen? Amen. We're ready for our welcome and recognitions. Amen. Amen. Listen, this is my mama, y'all. Amen. And we do have dignitaries as well as honorees in the house with us. Are there any candidates that came out? Amen. We do want to make sure that we recognize our honorees and our dignitaries.
Amen. We want to welcome all of our visitors in the house today. We ask that you would just stand for a few moments. And thank you for coming out to Rush this morning to help us commemorate our Black History Month. We ask that you would just let go and let God have his way in your life today. If you come in, you were feeling downtrodden, we want you to leave out lifted up. So we ask you just to turn it all over to Jesus and let him have his way in your life. Thank you.
Listen, while you're still standing, I'm sorry, while you're still standing, I do not want to break up our tradition here at Rush. I know this is a special program, but if you have your phones or a smart device or whatever you might have that you take your selfies with, we're going to ask that you would take those out at this time. Your smartphones, your tablets, your iPads, thank you. Whatever else you might have. Go to Twitter, Kik, Facebook, whatever social media you might use. Take a selfie with somebody. Let them know that you're here at Rush. Make sure you check in at Rush Memorial, okay? If you would, do me a favor. Go and hug on somebody, love on them. Make sure you take that selfie with them and post it to Rush Memorial, okay? Would you do that at this time? Yeah. Amen. Amen.
Praise the Lord.
Beautiful, beautiful. Ain't that like a selfie that make you smile, all right? Put some smiles on our faces. Amen. We're getting ready to hear from Rush Memorial. They're going to come and do a musical selection for us. Amen?
Amen.
Amen.
Praise the Lord, everybody. Praise the Lord.
Praise the Lord.
God is good today.
Amen.
Amen. This is the day that the Lord has made. And we didn't do our regular praise and worship, so we're going to do our opening song that we usually do. It's called This is the Day That the Lord Has Made. And we usually do it every Sunday as an opening song. So we're going to do that today for our selection. Amen? Amen. How many know this is the day that the Lord has made? I will rejoice and be glad in it. The song says, I will enter his gates with thanksgiving in my heart. I will enter his courts with praise. I will say this is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice, for he has made me glad. Amen. Stand to your feet as we sing our opening song for our selection. Amen.
Amen. Hallelujah.
Put your hands together. Let's have some church this morning. We come to make the devil mad. Amen. The song says, I will rejoice and be glad in it. Hallelujah. Somebody get Andrew, put that other tambourine. Good. Hallelujah. day that the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. Amen. If you have your programs, if you would turn, you'll see in your program right after the order of worship, the direct page over is our Black History Observance.
Yes.
Amen. Number 57. Amen. Let me know when you're there. All right. I'm going to read the part that's not in bold print. You read the part that's in bold print. Amen?
Amen.
Man. Matter of fact, just to honor this, can we all stand? I know I've asked you to stand a few times.
That's all right, Pastor. That's all right.
If you can't say you got anything else out of the day, you did get some exercise. Amen? Amen. Amen. Oh God, you have heard the anguished cries of our ancestors. Their sounds echo and penetrate time to remind us of our foreparents who were brutally captured and forcibly enslaved as they left the peaceful womb of their African homeland. Stony the road we trod. Oh God, you have seen the millions of dark bodies buried beneath the tumultuous waves of the deep. Bodies of African men and women who held the seeds of greatness. You have seen women's dreams for a united family vanish as they were sold at auction blocks. You have seen the legacy of the African American family decimated and demeaned by those who have attempted to control our destiny. Oh God, you have ignited the sparks within us into a blazing demand for freedom, equality, and justice. The quest cost Harriet Tubman sleepless nights as she led her people to freedom. It was an equality that Rosa Parks and civil rights activists fought for and gave their lives for. It was a justice that Martin Luther King Jr. stood for, as thousands stood with him at the Lincoln Memorial. Oh God, you have seen our tears. You have been pained by the evil of human hearts. Yet you love humanity enough that you sent your son, your only son, to identify with the outcast, marginalized, and rejected. As the cries of Jesus pierced your heart, so have the cries of your people. Cries from different cultures and in different languages. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears. Oh God, you answered us during our exodus from Africa. You wiped every teardrop during our exile into captivity. Our foreparents dared to dream that one day on these shores we would become politicians, preachers, educators, doctors, writers, scientists, artists, and so much more. Our ancestors' hard work, their courage, their convictions, and their belief in you paved the way of our emancipation and education. But it is clear you have liberated us, you have set us free. Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, I'm free at last. That's our shadow beneath thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our God and true to our faithful name. Amen. 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 We're getting ready to call up Mrs. Alethea Boone, amen, to give us some words at this time.
Good morning, everyone. celebration. Today we come to thank God for having us this race.
Amen.
We have run long and we are still running on. Black History Month is an annual celebration that tells of the achievements of African Americans at a time in history when once we had been forgotten. Today, we pause to salute the students of the Atlanta Student Movement, the students who sat in this church back in the early 60s when we were burdened, when we were in bondage, when we were people who could not use the restrooms. And we were people who had to drink from the colored fountains. So today, we honor those students, we honor those who are deceased, and later on we will honor those who are in hospice this morning. Thank you so much for your consideration. We will have just a short excerpt from some of our participants to set you in the other mood for the Black History Moment. They are as follows on your program. There's one change. Instead of Miss Chanel this morning, there will be Miss Cook. All right, ready?
And then when I thought it couldn't get worse, it did. My sister died from tuberculosis. But this led me to my interest in medicine. But at the time, I couldn't afford medical school. So what I did instead was, I went and taught at Morgan State University. And then after a couple of years, I was able to enroll at McGill University in Montreal, Canada. At McGill University, I received my MD and other surgery degrees. But when it seemed like it was all going so well, I heard that my father had passed. So I had to pick up from Montreal, Canada, and go back to the United States. I went to Howard Medical School, where I began to do research about blood plasma. In the late 1930s, I invented a way to preserve and store blood plasma for blood transfusion. At these times, blood could only be stored for about a week, so this was a monumental discovery. In 1950, at the age of 45, me and some other colleagues, 3 other doctors, were headed to the Tuskegee Institute to give a lecture. Now, I was very tired, and so while I was driving, I ended up falling asleep at the wheel. This resulted in a terrible accident, which I suffered severe chest injuries. By the time I reached the White Hospital, I had lost so much blood that they said I couldn't be resuscitated. Wow. But if it was me, I would have given myself a blood transfusion using the medical device I invented. But who am I? Only a doctor from McGill University with several medical degrees and a doctorate from Columbia University. Who am I? I am Charles Drew.
I was born in Dinwiddie County, Virginia, to a sharecropping family in 1930. I was valedictorian of my high school, graduated from Virginia State College, and taught math for a couple of years. In 1956, I began to work at the Naval Surface Warfare Center. I was the second black woman to ever be employed in an astronomical study. While there, I was on a team of mathematicians who worked on the satellite geodesy models that were incorporated into the Global Positioning System, GPS. I rose through the ranks to be given the honor of contributing to the accuracy of the GPS and satellite data that we use today. Who am I? I am Gladys Brown West. Thank you.
On June 23rd, 1940, I was born prematurely at 4.5 pounds in Clarksville, Tennessee. I was the 20th of the 22 of my father's siblings. My father was a railway porter and did odd jobs. My mother worked as a maid. During my early childhood, I suffered from several illnesses, including pneumonia, scarlet fever, polio, and infantile paralysis. I lost strength in my left leg and foot and wore a leg brace. I was able to overcome polio and learn to walk without a leg brace by the time I was 12 years old. When I was 14 years old and still in high school, I began attending track camps at Tennessee State University. I became the youngest member of the U.S. Olympic team and was one of the 5 TSU Tiger Bears who qualified for the 1956 Melbourne Olympics, where I won a bronze medal. I enrolled at Tennessee State University in 1958. In 1960, I became a world record holding Olympic champion and international sports icon in track and field. I was acclaimed the fastest woman in the world in the 1960s and the first American woman to win 3 gold medals in a single Olympic game. During my athletic career, I was hailed throughout the world as the fastest woman in history. In 1994, I was diagnosed with brain and throat cancer and died on November 12, 1994, at the age of 54. Who am I? I'm Will Mooney.
Amen. And again, we honor those who have gone before us. Amen. If you have your programs, if you would look in the back of your program, you'll see hymn number 333, Order My Steps. Listen, will everybody seated. Amen. Order my steps in your word. Michael Julian Bond. Councilmember Michael Julian Bond has served Atlanta citywide, representing more than 450,000 local residents. Since his election to the Atlanta City Council post, one at-large seat in November of 2009. He is a member of the Committee on Council and the Community Development and Human Resources and Public Safety Committees. From 1994 to 2001, Michael served on the council as the District 3 representative for portions of the city's south and northwest quadrants. During the time, he served as the City Council's president pro tempore and as chair of both the Public Safety and Community Development Committees. Outside of his council duties, Michael served as the Deputy Director and Chief Programs Officer for the Atlanta branch of the National Association for Advancement of Colored People. He has volunteered with the American Diabetes Association for more than 250 years, serving on its national board from 2011 to 2013. Born and raised in Atlanta, Michael is the son of the late civil rights leader Julian Bond and his wife, Alice. He attended Frederick Douglass High School, Morehouse College, and Georgia State University. In 2011, Michael received his certification for the Senior Executives in State and Local Government from Harvard University's John F. Kennedy School of Government. He is an active member at Antioch Baptist Church North in Atlanta, Georgia. Would you put your hands together at this time for Councilman Michael Julian Bond?
I want to say good morning to Rush. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you all doing today? This is a beautiful day. The Lord has made the weather right for us to come out. Such a beautiful Sunday morning. I want to thank the pastor of this church, Reverend Malcolm. Let's give Reverend Malcolm a round of applause. And God needs to be lifted up as well. Those who are out here preaching and trying to do the Lord's will in our community. I also want to say good morning to Madam Boone, former First Lady. I also see my friend and colleague, council member, Andrea L. Boone. Why don't you say that? It's good to see you this morning. It's a pleasure for me to be here. Here at Rush again, I feel at home at Rush. You know, we've got a deep family connection here. With my great-grandfather having been the pastor way back in the 19-teens, 1950, long time ago. And of course, for the reason for the documentary, my father and mother had a connection here also with the late Reverend Joseph Boone, who allowed them as students to come in and organize to desegregate Atlanta with many, many others, Lonnie King and Herschel Sullivan and Ruby Doris Smith. I know many of you probably have been over by the McDonald's over there at MLK and Joseph Lowry and seen that. If you haven't seen it, you need to go by and see it. It is a mural about Ruby Doris Smith, who was one of the students in the student movement, one of the unsung heroes who died prematurely and didn't see the movement go to fruition. So let me wind around. I mentioned those folks because the purpose of the purpose of the documentary is to highlight the student movement here in Atlanta. Now, everybody who's been here in Atlanta has always heard that famous phrase, Atlanta is the city too busy to what? Hate. Too busy to hate. But people don't ever ask where that has come from, where that generates from. Well, in Ivan Allen's biography, he states that it is directly in correlation with the Atlanta student movement. You know, we enjoyed Atlanta today that was only dreamed of, you know, really almost a decade ago, several decades ago. We have the kind of prosperity that is unrivaled for a southern city. And we have that because of the Atlanta student movement. In Atlanta, at those times, in the 1950s, there were civil rights movement. There was a civil rights movement going on, but it was largely due through litigation, with lawsuits being filed by individuals against the school system. Even Dr. Mays, as president of Morehouse, had a federal lawsuit against the transportation industry here in Atlanta. They sued over school desegregation after the 54 decision, but no direct confrontation, no direct action, meaning no protests, no organizing, no marches. Very little of that ever happened until 1960. And I believe it was March the 4th in 1960 where right over here where the CAU Student Center now exists, there was a place called Gates and Milton. It was a pharmacy, black owned, started by a pharmacist and a person who worked at the Citizens Trust Bank. They started the business. They had several of them around Atlanta, but they had one right up here on this corner. And it also operated as what used to be called a sock hop. They had seats and benches in there and a jukebox where the students could hang out and have hamburgers, cokes, milkshake, egg creams. I don't know if anybody remember what an egg cream actually is. But the students could hang out there. And on that particular day, the students in Greenville, South Carolina had begun their sit-in movement, which most people don't know. It is credited largely because of misinformation. But the actual first student sit-in started in Oklahoma City by a group of teenagers that were a part of the NAACP Youth Council there. But it wasn't reported that their answer to keeping African Americans down was not putting it in the paper. They didn't report on it. But the students themselves reported on it when they went to the NAACP convention. And part of those students that were there at the NAACP convention were students in North Carolina who heard about it, and then they took the sit-in movement to North Carolina to the lunch counters. And so when it was reported in our local papers, there was a student by the name of Lonnie King who had been in the Navy and had done a tour of duty and gotten out and was on the football team at Morehouse College. And so he approached my father and another gentleman and asked them if they had read the paper that day. And so, you know, like most college students, they read the paper every day, right? And so they were a little insulting. They said, hey, yeah, we read the paper, man. Like, what you talking? We go to Morehouse. What you talking about? We read the paper. He said, no, did you see this article about the sit-ins in North Carolina? And they said, yeah, we saw it. He said, and then Lonnie said, do you think it ought to happen here? He said, yeah, we think it will probably happen here. He said, why don't we make it happen here? And then I said, what? And then so they took both sides of Gates and Milton and began to organize what became the student movement. And at its height, the student activities, and they were supported by local black businesses, local citizens who supported them financially and with lunches and with support. They organized that at its height. They brought the downtown business establishment to its knees. Now, $10 million is a lot of money, right? Been a lot of news reports about that jewelry store in Buckhead being robbed for $10 million. Now, imagine what $10 million was like in 1960. Now, anybody here old enough to remember Rich's department store? Rich's was the #1 retail store, not just in Atlanta, but in the southeastern United States. Rich's was so powerful, and so it was such an economic giant that during the Great Depression, they loaned the city of Atlanta money to pay its teachers and its employees through the Depression. And they were so rich, they didn't even ask to be repaid. That's how strong Rich's was, right? They had that policy that no matter what you bought there, you could bring it back and return it, even if it was 10 years later. You could bring it back to Rich's. Well, Rich, they organized a boycott of Easter. heaven help us, we all know how black people love Easter, dress up for Easter. So the students asked that people not buy new clothes for Easter.
That's right.
And they boycotted Riches and what's the one across the street? It's a lot. No, what Davidson, it was Kessler. They boycotted all of those downtown stores, and Riches alone lost $10 million in 1960s money. And so Robert Woodruff, who was head of Coca-Cola at the time, was good friends with Mayor Hartsfield at the time. He had been to South Africa. And he told Hartsfield, he said, you know what? I don't want to see my hometown go the way of Birmingham and Montgomery. He said, you boys, and we all know who the boys were. He said, you boys need to back off of this. So within a year or so, the major downtown businesses were desegregated, largely without a lot of trouble and incident. Now, we all know there was still trouble in Atlanta. We all know there was still racism in Atlanta. But what made this so amazing is that the young people, with the support of folks like Reverend Boone, who allowed them to meet here at Rush, because they couldn't meet on campus. Because even though the college presidents were, they were supportive of them behind the scenes, but couldn't come out and be supportive in front of the scenes, because quite as it's kept, many white people were giving them money to run the schools. And so they couldn't be seen as being supportive of their students. But those students, many of them 17, 18, 19, 20 years old. Can you imagine that? Being that young, taking on this type of responsibility. And so out of that, Atlanta was able to become a city in an ocean of hatred and racism in the South, where the North could transport their businesses. Because at the same time, what also helped Atlanta grow was the advent of an invention. It's called air conditioning. And so in the North, just like how NAFTA and all these other things move businesses to other countries because it's cheaper, at that time in the 50s, in the Northeast, they were looking to relocate businesses to the South because it was cheaper. The labor was cheaper, cost was cheaper. And so Birmingham was the principal city in the South. It was the capital city of the South. And all of the highway signs all over the country, if you were heading south, they would say Birmingham and then whatever else the closest turnoff was, right? And so Atlanta wasn't even a real player when it compared to Birmingham.
That's right.
But because everybody saw Birmingham's blood running in the street, you know, saw the tragedy and the controversy coming out of Birmingham, northern businesses were like, well, maybe we know Birmingham is king of steel, but maybe we shouldn't look there. Well, Atlanta was able to say, you know what? We're in the South too. And guess what? Birmingham is full of hate, but we're too busy to what? Hate. We're too busy to hate. We care about green. We care about business, you know. They didn't say they didn't hate. They just said they were too busy to do it. But that's why most of the businesses began to relocate to Atlanta. Atlanta got a progressive reputation, and we enjoy the Atlanta we have today. And so this is a story in their own words of people who participated in that movement, all at varying degrees. We interviewed over 115 people, and we're still finding people to interview who had various roles. Some were there at the very beginning, some only made sandwiches. Some couldn't march because their parents or their coaches or their teachers told them, you lose your scholarship if you went down there. We wanted to tell a 365-degree story of what it was like so you could be submerged in it and live it for yourself. We put up about, this is associated with the Marker Project. They're digitally interactive. You know, Rush has been honored. We honored Rush back in 1996 with Stone Marker out here with some other markers around the AU Center. The state has put up a marker. The city, we will put up one by the end of the year. We've got two up here on the corner that you may want to see. They're digitally interactive. So we've got a QR code on them. You can scan it, and then you see a web page, and then you'll be able to hear directly from the people who were involved. And so
that's awesome.
We're working on this now. And once it's all done, we've got about 3 more markers to erect, one over here at Pascal's and a couple others downtown. You'll be able to get on your smartphone and follow it, and then actually hear from the people who actually made the history. So 50 years from now, 100 years from now, there won't be any ambiguity as to why Atlanta is the way that it is. And so without further ado, I believe we can cue up the film. Okay.
I remember a sign at the fairgrounds in Atlanta that said "Niggas and Dogs Not Allowed," and it was signed by the mayor of William Hartsfield. You know, he signed it. He didn't care. And then I remember when they finally decided to let black people go to the fair. It was on a Thursday. They were closed at 9:30 early, and it said "Nigga and Dog Thursday." You know, we were called niggas constantly, and I had a problem with that. You know, my grandmama taught me when I was young that a nigga was not a person; it was a personality or something different. You know, so this is not you.
I think that one thing that made me realize that when that policeman told my date to get his hand off his car, never get your hand off my car. That just sunk into my being, and I was like, how dare he call him or me, because we were together, those words, and I'm not going to let that happen again. And I'm gonna fight to show him that I'm not like that, and you can't push me around and call me names like that. And that stuck with me and that's been 50 years ago.
We kind of became disgusted. You know how now they call us old school? We didn't have that term in those days, but we thought it was just so, come on, let's get real. Let's do something about this situation. You know, the older people were having their meetings at church and so on. But once Julian and Lonnie came and all of them started, you know, we were having our training sessions. So we need to do something. We need to move.
It was about what is to come. It was correcting it for our children, those who would come behind us, and so forth. You know, it was not about what would happen to us personally. And that was why you had to be able to sort of to get in the true spirit of nonviolence. And you could not be afraid. We'd all be afraid, you know, not knowing what to expect. Remember, we're living in a time of the Ku Klux Klan and the lynchings and so forth. And in Stone Mountain, Georgia, right, it was a symbol of the Ku Klux Klan, where they had their rallies and meetings, people murdered, this kind of thing. So it was not about being afraid.
People say that the activities were radical. I'm not convinced that they were. They were radical, but I think you have to understand the context in which the activities occurred. First of all, the students were increasingly aware that the Old South had to change, that it could not exist.
That was when the young people basically asserted by their actions, by their words, and later on by their deeds, that we're not going to agree to segregation anymore. And that we're going to try to change this thing. And what I think we were trying to say, if not now, when, if not us, who? Because we tried all those years at NACP beginning in 1909 through the legal system. And white Southerners, and to an extent white America, was prepared for another century of segregation. I can't remember any time the white community has ever voluntarily desegregated anything.
I got involved in the civil rights movement in 1960. I was sitting in a cafe across the street from Morehouse College, and a student whom I knew only vaguely came up to me and held up a newspaper and said, "Have you seen this?" And I thought he was asking, "Do you read the newspaper?" And I was insulted because I thought most college students read a newspaper every day. But no, he meant a particular story. And the story said, "Greensboro students sit in for third day." And it told how for the third day in a row, black students in Greensboro, North Carolina, had gone to the local F&W Woolworth department store, had bought something here, had bought something there, had bought something over here, and then had sat down at the lunch counter, asked to be served. They refused service, they sat there for an hour, they got up and left. Another group sat down and took their place and repeated the same thing for another hour, and they got up and left. And another group came and saw him, and he said, "Have you seen that?" I said, "Yes, I saw it." He said, "What do you think about it?" I said, "I think it's wonderful, I think it's great." He said, "Don't you think it ought to happen here in Atlanta?" I said, "Oh, it's going to happen here in Atlanta. I know it's going to happen here." And before he could say, "Why don't we make it happen here?" He said, "You take one side of the cafe, I'll take the other side, and we'll call the group together." And we made sure that we had somebody from Morehouse College, from Spelman College, from Morris Brown College, from Atlanta University, and from the Interdenominational Theological Center, from all of the institutions that made up the Atlanta University Center. Made sure we had somebody from each of these schools. And that's how the Atlanta Student Movement began, and that's how I got involved.
I got an interest in it because I knew of the evilness that was going on at that time, that is still going on, but in different forms and in different ways, but not being able to sit at a lunch counter because your skin is black is just not right, does not make sense. So I wanted to be a part of eradicating that kind of foolishness.
I think that the Atlanta movement was important. I think it was more difficult to organize because you were dealing with 6 institutions. In the case of the others, it was using just one institution. So that made a difference. I think that to the advantage of Atlanta, you had a fairly sizable African-American middle class community that helped sustain what was going on.
Well, first of all, I should say most of the students who went to jail and demonstrated were campus students. Campus students were not allowed to go off the campus after the hours of 8 o'clock. The gates were locked. For example, if any student wanted to spend the night with a family friend, they needed written permission from their parents before they were allowed to do that. And so the thought of going to jail and spending, as we did, October 19th and 23rd of 1960, 4 nights in jail was something novel. And that brings me to another point. One of the major tasks I had was to work very closely with the president of Spelman College and Dr. Albert Manley in order to convince him to show some tolerance with respect to the activities the students were undertaking, and to understand that in the long run it was in the interest of Spelman College and its students to participate.
Our president, James P. Brawley, was one who was very, very supportive of the students, regardless of what you might hear from other people. He was the one who when he realized that we meant business, called in the leaders from the various organizations on campus, and he would tell us everything that the presidents were saying. So the fateful day that we had the big meeting with Billy Mays, he called us in to have a conference, and he said, "I just want to let you know that y'all are running your lives, that you're gonna not be able to graduate, and your parents are gonna lose their jobs and so forth." And so that's when very quietly Dr. Brawley said, "Well, I'm supporting my students." And then he introduced those of us who was there, and there were about 4 or 5 of us from Clark.
And so Benny Mays looked at me and he said, "Oh my God, not Carolyn."
What you do, you have to do it at your own risk. We'll protect you as much as we possibly can. If we get there, we'll try to get you out. We'll do that. But the educative process must go on. And when people here in the city, even business people contact us, what's going on? We tell them things going on normally here. These are students that are pursuing this in an intelligent sort of way, and they need it. I remember one person said that we ought to stop these students and go on class, stop all this construction in the city. And my response was, we can't stop these students. This is a movement. You have to understand that this is a movement, and it's not only a movement on any particular campus or there. It's a movement on all campuses, and it's a movement that's nationwide. You can't stop a movement of that kind. But this is a revolution.
I say to the students, if you're going to jail, notify your parents. Let them know. Don't have them calling up asking me, my boy in jail. And you tell them. And if you tell them, then that's all right. So they did. They went to jail, and I was down to see them and talk to them. And when they said they would not come out until they demanded to be back, I said, now you remember that you're not going to get your grades for city jail.
I don't know if we were ever given the official okay to proceed with the movement, but I think they came to a realization that the movement was going to happen. The student sit-in movement in Atlanta would happen with or without the blessing, the official blessing, and this was their way of saying to us, it's okay to do it, but do it in a way that brings credit to the institutions. Dr. Mays, I remember, was very instrumental and very forceful in arguing that there should be no doubt as to why you're doing it. And you shouldn't, and I recall this specifically, you shouldn't do this just for the right to eat. This is much bigger than eating, and the world needs to know that.
Although the presidents would have preferred that we forget about the whole thing, and these things take time, but we didn't want to hear any more about gradualism. And we were around the 20-year age, and it was just not Lonnie and Julian and me, but students were anxious to do something, anxious to participate.
Well, it gave me the will, I think, to challenge and to try to change those things that denied us the equal participation in our government and civic life, and commit yourself, I guess, to contributing and participating in whatever movement or organization or way that you could to change things.
I thank the professors at that time that were named Senate, because once those kids, what we would do would be organized and said the night before they would notify the team captains that we're going to march. Then we had designated area on East Campus. If you were part of Team A, you went to this section, and they would always start by saying hymns. Then they would start saying We Shall Overcome. And they would start at Spelman Gate, come down over then across Chestnut Street, pick up the students from Clark and Morehouse, go on up to Hunter Street, MLK now, go up past Morris Brown on the bridge, and we would pick up those students. And once they started singing, marching, the professors would hear that song, they would close their books to walk out the door. But they know we were gone. It's still rough though. You know, I'm not talking about it. Boom. And I didn't even go to jail, you know. But that's life.
We had the mass meetings. We had chosen 7 people who were going to go to jail, and nobody, absolutely nobody. I told them, every time you have these meetings, reiterate the fact that you're not going to, contest. If they say get up and leave, you get up and leave. And when we did the first march, only these 7 people supposed to step forward. Nobody else, nobody, although one person did do it. And it was horrible because she stayed in jail for like 2 weeks.
And I think my life became a kind of a special depository and support organization for the student movement. One thing that stands out in my mind, and I'm sure Maurice will recall this, we had a lady on our switchboard named Sammy Wells, and of course E.M. Martin, who was the chief operating officer of the company, was very sensitive to the civil rights movement. The day that massive demonstration, the Atlanta Light switchboard was turned over to the student movement. And Chief Jenkins was never able to have enough police officers to track them. Our command post, which a guy named Reverend Fred Bennett, the commanded, we were able to communicate and to keep the police busy. And of course, many of the students were arrested. And we recall that many of them who were arrested did not desire to get out of jail. But those who got out of jail, their parents around the country and around the world could be assured that if they want bonds, we had already organized bonds. A group of Atlanta citizens responded to our appeal, and we had all the money we needed to get students out of bond. But that was a great day, well planned and coordinated.
We organized the first march, and we thought we would have a different strategy than had been experienced in any of the other cities. It looked like to me there was some dialogue going on about the ICC and federal government buildings. We were keyed in on the public facility notion. So we identified 7 places in town. 11 was it? Didn't realize. State Capitol, all the federal government buildings, City Hall, Fulton County, train station. When there were public facilities, eating facilities, we targeted them. And I think I was acting as action chairman at the time. And we organized, and I remember it was a very blistering morning, wind and misty rain, when we had that protest. We met on the campus at Morehouse, the Atlanta University, around the big tree. And we sang songs and we fired everybody up.
I was involved in the very first sit-in efforts of the Atlanta student movement. Was a part of the little group that Lonnie King rounded up to discuss doing this in the first instance. And was one of the students among about 200 or so of us who sat in at about 11 locations on March 15, 1960. Now, Rich's department store was our main target, although there were others that we were boycotting and picketing. If we reduced our forces or were short of people, we always made sure that Rich's was included in the picketing. And the rationale was this was everybody's favorite store.
I did, during the absolute first movement, help to plan and organize and solicit students, beg students from Spelman to participate, acknowledging and reminding them that this was very serious and there was no question if you would come out for the sit-in, which was being planned, that you had to be committed to nonviolence. But that was also true if you were even just marching. You had to be committed to all the principles of nonviolence. I did say that, especially when we decided we were going to sit in, you could be, anything could happen. So I myself prepared that it could even be death.
I remember getting arrested at least 3 or 4 times associated with restaurants. And then, of course, the one time when the group I was in was sent to prison because we had successfully filled the jails. So that group was led by A.D. King, the younger brother of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. There were 5 of us in it, and that was a time when Sprayberry, appropriately named, was spraying us as we sat at the counter, and they had already called the police to arrest us.
We tried sitting at lunch counters. And you had to be programmed to sit at a lunch counter. You know, you could not just go sit at a lunch counter. They had to teach you, you know, it was like we were programmed on how to act, you know, because some of us, even though we were a part of this Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, people like me grew up in the projects, and you know, you're just gonna do so much. But I thank God that He allowed me to not show that side.
You see, we had been told we were going to be put out of school. We wouldn't be able to attend classes. If we, you know, because the president's heard about it. Well, that was their job. Their job was not to say, okay, all you students, go and sit in and go to jail. Their job involved educating young people in an academic environment. So they really couldn't tell us to go. So they told us, you know, this might be perilous academically. Your grades are going to suffer. You will not be excused for this activity. But you couldn't have found a more proud group of people. After we were involved in the Senate, they were our biggest cheerleaders. You know, we had to say, okay, if that's what you're gonna do, then you're gonna have to put everybody out of this school because we're gonna try to get everybody on this campus to go.
Because I was a good writer, I volunteered to be the publicity guy. And that was my role both in the Atlanta Student Movement and in the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. I was the person who was in touch with the media who said the NAACP did that, but the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee did that. Dr. King did this, but the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee did this. I made sure that the media knew what the Atlanta Student Movement was doing, what the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, who was doing what. The point of no return for me was when I realized I was spending more time with the student movement than I was with my education, that I was neglecting my studies, and I had to make a choice, go to school or go to the movement, and I chose the movement.
So this book here is really, in some sense, the masterpiece work of Julia, right? So Julian was, you know, he turned 20 in 1960, and then between 1960 and 1965, when the last edition of this was put out, Julian imagined and actually developed and ran the publishing arm of the Young People's Movement. I mean, if you think about it, in those days, the whole South was one newsbeat, and it was very scarcely covered. There was just Claude Sitton, who covered it for the New York Times, Carl Fleming covered it for Newsweek, and Larry Still covered it for Jet Magazine. And then there was Intrepid Julia, right, who covered it for the Young People's Movement. And really, if you look at this, he had a really stingy budget, right? There was no money. But his language that he used was as stingy as his budget and as precise and demanding, right? He really set the standard for what was to be authentic news about the Young People's Insurgency.
I'm so glad that the ones who were in the arrest group made the sacrifice. I remember Carolyn Long Banks and Julian Bond because they made the ultimate sacrifice because it affected their whole academic prowess. They were not able to be in class for the final exams. And so, therefore, their schooling was interrupted. They made that sacrifice.
I think that SNCC gave me the perspective of how I viewed the world and how gave me tools to analyze what was going on. The most important thing was that SNCC gave me a worldview and a way of analyzing what life is about in this country.
I had been involved and gone out when I was at Agnes Scott in college. I had gone out to Morehouse and to Spelman, so I knew the AU campus somewhat. And I knew that they would probably be starting to, because it spread like wildfire. So Lonnie King called me and told me, about the Atlanta Student Movement. And I started going to their meetings, and that's when I met Lonnie and Charles Black and Julian Bond, Marion Wright Edelman, Marianne Johnson, all of the movement people. So I was never an official part of that. And what they kind of dubbed me as was an official observer, because as a white person, I could be standing on the sidelines and observe what was going on, and then I could call Don Hollowell, their lawyer, or I could call the news. We had a couple of sympathetic news reporters, and I could say, 20 people were just arrested at Riches, and they're carrying them off right now to jail, blah, blah, blah. So that's what my role really was an observer. But I also went to all of the meetings and of what was going on.
And almost in no time, although I didn't enroll back in school until September, I started participating right off almost as soon as I got off the bus in Atlanta. So I headed straight for the campus because that's what I was comfortable with anyway before I left. And when I got out of there, we met on board the campus over at the quadrangle over there. We read it, we sung songs, and by the time when I got out, they were marching on Riches, and the Atlanta Cabana Hotel was the one they were trying to integrate. And I think that's the one that we were picketing when I first got out. I didn't want to turn back. I mean, go back to what? Well, we had everything to gain and really nothing to lose. Somebody had to do something. And things don't, this idea of the Lord sitting here waiting on you, can't do nothing until you get here, that don't quite cut it, You have to make things happen.
We weren't afraid because we had nothing to lose. Our parents were afraid. Didn't send you down there to go to jail. But then when you came home and you were honored to do it, then they had their chests beaten. Oh my God. But it was a time of, I guess, us coming into our manhood, womanhood, and realizing that we had been denied civil rights.
Pascal's was a meeting place that was provided for us by the Pascal brothers. And the one thing that stands out in my mind was that the last time we were arrested, we were made to go to the Fulton County Jail on Jefferson Street. And students marched and came in, to support us. And when we got finished, Mr. Pascal and my father, Ralph Sr., got the educational community involved. Herman Russell got the business community involved. And Dr. Clayton Warner got the physicians involved. And they all posted bond so that we could get out of jail. And we met at Pascal's and celebrated. And Mr. Pascal didn't charge anybody for food. He treated everyone.
We spent a lot of time. We worked really hard. We worked very hard during the day, and then we spent a lot of time at night talking and with each other and discussing various books and things that we had read, articles that we had read, and ideas that we were exchanging with each other about what was the right path to freedom and equality for our people.
And that's what, for me, Black Power evolved out of those kinds of discussions.
Some of us joined the committee as members at large, and I was one of those who joined the committee as an at-large member at the invitation of Lonnie King. I had, you might say, a special place, not that I was special, but a unique role in the movement because I was a local pastor, a student pastor, which gave me a base of participation that the students, except for maybe one or two, did not have.
You know, people all kind of always ask me, well, what was it like for you as an Asian in the movement, you know? And so I think about that and I say, well, okay, is like being an Asian, I walked into, and being a Canadian Asian on top of everything else, I walked into a society in a world in the South that I would call, you know, the two solitudes, the black and white society, you know. So we could easily slip between the two worlds. Like I never had a fear of entering, you know, segregated place. I just walk in there, and that's cool. And then into the black world, I could do kind of numbers there that a white person couldn't do.
It was clear that, you know, SNCC was the cutting edge of the civil rights movement. That they were the ones, you know, picketing on the streets. They were working in the toughest parts of the South, the Delta, Southwest Georgia, parts of Alabama, and you know, they had a certain flair and they belonged, but it was just terribly appealing. And I was drawn to it very much. The energy, you know, and plus the cause was righteous.
You think of the rich talent and leadership and contributions that can be traced back directly to the movement of black students in the South, and in particular the Atlanta student movement, and also the walls that were torn down. I mean, Dr. King, if you just connect the dots, the students were moving on Riches, downtown department store, the Magnolia. Dr. King came and participated and presented and was locked up and sent to Reidsville, and somebody figured out it was smart for Jack Kennedy to call Coretta Scott King and help them locate where they had put Martin Luther King up there in the Reidsville prison. And the next thing you know, we had Jack Kennedy as the President of the United States with a strong backing from black voters in the black community. Direct connections to the student movement right here in Atlanta.
I think the most important thing was the bond that developed between the people who were SNCC members. We considered that we had a brotherhood that stood for one for all and all for one. And I can say, honestly, that none of us
So the choice was, who will hurt us least? And so I was proud to be involved, working for Mr. Hollowell, but I was even more proud of these students who had the courage to leave the comfort of Spelman and Morehouse and Morningside and Florida, to go make that with
the sisters are singing the songs, people. Singing the songs. The little children. And I see them come across the street. You know what that's like? Some father, husband, who is fixing to die. And I watched them walk up to the curb. I saw their pickaxes. Some of them there and you think you move hay with, and then the guns. And you just started thinking about, nobody knew but me. And almost a funny look came over the white folks' face. And they were scared. I'm waiting to hear the gunshot. They brought their guns and they said, they moved across the street. But this funny look on his face. Was here for I figured that out. Ready to die, not to hate. New crackers on the Spirit of God coming off of you. That's the movement, baby. Huh? You hear what I just said? God coming. That's how powerful it was.
We felt that we didn't have the things that we needed as a people. And the young people began to cry out. And when they began to demonstrate, protest, speak out against it, a movement was born out of that. Thanks to people like Ella Baker. A movement was born out of that.
Women had to be tough in SNCC. There wasn't any question about it. But we were respected, and our opinions were heard. We were the backbone of the organization, and we functioned at every level. And let me give you an example, because there's an important person named Ruby Doris Robinson, who somehow is left out of the history of SNCC a lot of times because you hear so much about Ralph Brown, Mr. Carmichael. But Ruby Doris was a student at the Atlanta University Center. She was from Atlanta. Her family was there in Atlanta. She was the first generation to go to college from her family. And she was one of the strongest women, or strongest leaders in SNCC that I knew.
SNCC also had the philosophy, which I take to a Bob Dylan lyric, which says, I'm better than no one and no one is better than me. And that, in fact, all people are equal. And that, you know, everybody had a say, and everybody, there were no leaders. You know, it was the people that led.
And I think that's a part of the history that is a critical part of the history, because what we did in Atlanta could not have happened. We were very proud of Julian. We were very proud of Lenny. We were very proud of, and this is as fellow students. We were proud of ourselves for doing what we did. Yeah, I don't think we ever thought that what happened. It changed all of us.
It was a serious movement and a serious time, but people were, in the end, human beings who enjoyed, and that's the point that they kept trying to make. We're just like everybody else, you know, we live and breathe. We are living, breathing human beings, and we're entitled to all the rights and privileges of living, breathing human beings.
We do not intend to wait placidly for those rights which are already legally and morally ours to be meted out to us one at a time. Today's youth will not sit by submissively while being denied all of the rights, privileges, and joys of life. We want to state clearly and unequivocally that we cannot tolerate in a nation professing democracy and among people professing Christianity the discriminatory conditions under which the Negro is living today in Atlanta, Georgia, supposedly one of the most progressive cities in the South. This is an excerpt from an appeal for human rights which appeared in the Atlanta Journal and Constitution in Atlanta, Georgia on March 2nd, 1960.
Well, it put everything in black and white, made it very clear. It was very articulate. It was very meaningful because, on the one hand, those of us who had enjoyed what you would consider then normal functions of quality of life, realized that these were things that we had day in and day out. Jobs, education, voting rights, whatever, go down the list. And yet here was a whole, in our case in Atlanta, maybe close to approaching half of the population not given these rights. So seeing a manifesto like that in print was academically sound and professionally done. It represented all 6 of the predominantly black colleges in our city, and this gave it stature. I was very impressed with it, and I was pleased that along the way some of the older African Americans, as well as the ministry and the white community, came forth and supported these causes.
The Atlanta student movement was greatly helped by the way the college presidents handled it. They never opposed it, but they simply said, before you start demonstrating, sit down and write the appeal document, and they paid for it to go in the papers. Now, that was extremely important.
Yes, the quadrangle was a sacred space. It was a meeting place. And I can see back in the day when we met there in front of Trevor Arnett Library. By the way, also, Mr. Julian Bond's mother was a librarian in that library. But we gathered there and we mapped out our strategies. We went through role plays. And after we met, prayed, and we sang, we were fired up and ready to go and to accept anything.
We would all meet and on Clark Atlanta's campus, Spelman, Morehouse, and the ITC students, as well as at Clark Atlanta. Clark Atlanta was the focal point. And from Clark Atlanta, we will march up there to Chestnut, which is James P. Brawley now, and march down James P. Brawley to Hunter Street, which is Martin Luther King now, MLK. And we will pick up the students at Morris Brown from that point in ITC. And that was the point of no return. We didn't feel that we could be passively resistant, or we went ahead, we forged ahead. And we forged ahead, a lot of us did. And some of the kids that did turn around, they worked behind the scenes because they didn't, some of their parents didn't want them involved, and that's understandable. So what a lot of them did, they did placards, put out papers,
And you probably don't know anything about a mimeograph machine, but that was our source of printing then. And so a lot of those kids work behind the scenes. So that's why you had the foot soldiers of Spelman and the other kids from Morehouse, the young men from Morehouse too. But we all came together collectively as a group to create the Atlanta student movement. And it was a wonderful time for us.
I remember that night. I was a member of Warren United Methodist Church. That's where I grew up. And yes, I remember that night. Attorney Walden, well, we thought that we had been sold out by Attorney Walden because he had been in a meeting negotiating for us in terms of opening up all public accommodations to African Americans. And in some way, we got the word that he had sold out to the white boys. Oh, that was horrible. Oh, no. So we all assembled at Warren United Methodist Church. The community, people were there. I mean, it was a full house.
So they asked, the students had this big mass meeting at One Memorial Church. And when we got in the church, you could hardly move. It was like I use the expression, a basketball game that was fired up. The room was just packed like worms. You couldn't hardly get in there. And every time William Homebuilders, Daddy King, Sam Williams, Dr. Bates, anyone got ready to say anything, they were booed off the stage. So I remember distinctly that Dr. King came from the back of the room. If you go to Warren, you know, he had all these steps you come up, and he was coming down the aisle like a bride. He's coming down the aisle with bread, you know, but he was slow. And I never forget, here his hands up like this. And I can't describe the feeling. Now I knew Dr. King was Jesus. Okay, but I'm telling you, the feeling of that, the atmosphere in that room was unbelievable. And I guess with him walking up with his hands up like this, and he came in not saying a word, and I'm telling you, it was like, crowd just went down to nothing. And about chills in my body, to tell you the truth. And I said, why am I feeling like this? My God, I got chilled. And when he came in, all the way walking, and the noise was up until when he got, but as soon as you saw him, they stayed quiet. And that kid was quiet because he had passed those benches. And the closer he got to the front, the noise continued to subside. And then when he got on that stage, I will never forget, he held his hand up and used a parable like, we on the 2-yard line. See, we got 18 seconds to play. We got the ball. All we got to do is fumble the ball. They won the game. We got, 2 yards to go, or 1 yard, something like that. And we got 18 seconds. Do we fumble this ball? So that's what he was saying to this crowd. We've come this far, look at all that we've done. And we're gonna come this far, we're gonna let them win, they win when we don't work together. You know, that's a fact.
Hello, my name is John B. Smith Sr. I am the publisher and chief executive officer of the Atlanta Inquirer, a newspaper which was founded in 1960 for the Atlanta student movement on the appeal for human rights.
Atlanta during the war was not supportive of the demonstrations downtown, and so we needed a vehicle for communication. And as I recall, there was a meeting held in the Rucker House on the property of Atlanta Life, where Jesse Hill had called a large segment of the community to come together and see if we could raise some money to start a newspaper. And I was impressed by the first person that put up his money. The first person that put up his money up before he could hardly finish making his presentation was Q.P. Jones Sr. He just reached in his pocket and peeled off $5 $100 bills and put them on the table and didn't even ask for a receipt. I put in a meager $250 with a check. But that was the spirit of the thing. And once we got the paper going, then we had means of communicating broadly and informing the community of the nuances. There was more behind this than just students downtown sitting at lunch counters and getting arrested and getting bailed out of jail. There was something in this for everybody in the black community.
Really, the Atlanta Inquirer, which is being published today, grew out of the need for the student movement to have a voice that they could communicate broadly in the community. The dominant newspaper, the Journal-Constitution, of course, was not interested and did not support the movement. And unfortunately, at that time, the Atlanta Daily World, I guess the first black daily newspaper in the country, did not do so. But really, I think we need to point back. The first couple of issues were published by J. Lowell Ware, a printer. He and the Black Real Estate Board, the Empire Real Estate Board, really, just as Maurice has indicated, were concerned about that. But in order to really support the movement throughout, as Maurice has indicated, we needed established publication. And so this group that Maurice referred to, that met in one of the Atlanta Life buildings, came together to finance a business plan to have a newspaper that would go on and not go from week to week. And that particular group really not only financed it, but became a successful business. The work of Maurice, and I gotta say this, Maurice, your editorials, your editorial cartoons really made it easy. It told the story and it advanced many of the goals of the student movement.
Of course, there were those of public accommodation, and when you take those, that has the effect of spreading so far that it was very difficult to tell where it stopped. You might have a law which says that you aren't to have black people and white people sitting somewhere in a given situation. But the effect of it is that it denied both parties of the right to live as they wanted to live.
Donald Hollowell is the premier civil rights attorney who assembled a team of lawyers from America, all over America, to help represent people in the civil rights struggle. Donald Hollowell practiced law in his own law firm at 859 Hunter Street, initially with Horace T. Ward, who became the first African-American federal judge. Vernon Jordan was brought in initially, secondly, after Horace Ward, and then the law firm became Hollowell, Ward, Moore, Hollowell, Ward, and Moore, Howard Moore. Howard Moore is also a very brilliant attorney.
Integration in itself is not sufficient because we as Africans and descendants of Africans have a peculiar history and a peculiar relationship to this country. that for too long a period of time, our lives have not mattered because we weren't allowed to have an aspirational life of our own. We could be the aspiration of others as their property during slavery and during the Jim Crow period, to be exploited as cheap and unpaid labor, but to have aspirations to be, say, an architect, or to be a dancer or a singer, or a baseball player. That was denied us under the segregated system. And under integration, we seem to feel that it's sufficient that we're able to be physically in the proximity or next to white people. And that is not sufficient. That we should have a consciousness as a people that we have to work harder and be more purposeful than perhaps other people, because our history has been so different.
Even in the earlier sit-ins, I was surprised at the outpouring of sympathy for whites. I'd hoped for it, I wanted it, but I didn't expect it, but it was so great. And the key to me, and I think the key to the whole thing, was this nonviolence. The fact that we were nonviolent, the fact that we wouldn't hit back, the fact that we take this punishment, and the punishment was severe, and carry on. I think people found that admirable. Some people thought it nutty and crazy, but I think most people found it admirable. Maybe something they wouldn't do themselves, but something they admired other people doing. And the idea that you could love your enemy and carry on this fight for justice and civil rights, I think was admirable to people, and it created a large cadre of admirers whom we would not have had ordinarily.
It was a famous moment. The marches would stop, and some people would say, "What do you want? Freedom now." And Willie Briggs would go through the crowd and say, "No, we want black power. We want black power." And so at the footage on television that came out was Stokely Carmichael standing on the back of a truck in the dark Mississippi night saying, "What do you want?" And the crowd shouting, "Black power!" And, "Black power! Black power!" And it was a dramatic moment.
I did get a chance to go to one mass meeting over in Dixie Hill with her, and there was a bunch of us all in one car, and so many policemen with guns. And this is my first experience with movement, because I just got out of the army, you know. And it was really an experience and frightening and everything.
I was arrested leading a sit-in demonstration at the Atlanta City Hall. I led a group to the cafeteria in the basement of the City Hall, and we went past the steam tables where these black women were serving us. And they were happy to see us, and a little afraid to see us. Happy because they'd read about these sit-ins happening in other places, and all of a sudden they were going to be witnesses. A little afraid because they knew that police would be coming, and black people, of course, had this aversion against police and didn't want to be involved in that. So anyway, we went along the steam tables, we got our food, we came to the cashier, and she said, "I'm awfully sorry." She was polite like Southerners are. "I'm awfully sorry. This is for City Hall employees only." I said, "You got a big sign out front that says City Hall cafeteria. The public is welcome." She said, "We don't mean it." I said, "We'll stand here till you do." And she called the police. The police came and arrested us and took us to jail.
And the whole system was stacked against you. So part of what they would do is they would put these tough guys in jail thinking they were going to intimidate us. Which, of course, I'll tell you, the first night I slept with one eye open. I ain't trust this guy. This dude, when he was sleeping in the bed, he slept on the floor. He took his jacket off, rolled up, put it on his head. And I was on the top bunk. I'm sleeping with my eye. I'm watching this dude. Oh, what are you going to do? This was a bad man. You know, this was an evil man. I'll tell you, there's some evil people out there. This was an evil dude. He said the next day, so, but I tell you what he happened to me. The next morning he asked me, what was I doing in there? I ain't say nothing to him. I had no I ain't want to get in that conversation. So I go, that's why I was part of the civil rights movement. And he said, well, what do you do in the jail? I said, well, we were marching and, picking them, trying to get them to, so you ain't got no business in here. He said, jail speak like me. You don't have no business in here. Now, I make that point because the authorities who were trying to intimidate us by putting these people in, putting us in cells with these regular criminals, the regular criminals knew that we were not criminals. They knew we were students. They knew we shouldn't have been in jail in the first place. So all that did was really make them know even more so how wrong the system was. Because they were, and although this guy was a criminal, he figured he should have been in there, but I shouldn't have been in there. And so we were organizing these people. I know why we had these great stories about us singing freedom songs. The prisoners would be singing with us. Everybody singing "We Shall Overcome," and God's on our side.
There's certain things you can't just walk in the walk in the Fox Theater, for example, downstairs in the front entrance. We used to have to go up the side, and I tell you the truth, for one reason or other, after I attained a certain age, I started going to the Fox. One of these days, if God willing now, I would like to go back around the side and see those steps, because those were the longest steps, get upstairs, upstairs in the Fox, those had the best seat. But in order to get there, there was a mental burden, more so than a physical burden. But we were young and small, but we said going up these steps, and so that's something, to rest with me. And so I haven't been in the Fox Theater since.
I remember a particular incident. I was marching with a group, and these white boys came up and they jumped out of the car and they just proceeded to go down the line spitting at us. And I remember that, of course, we couldn't do anything. And that was a horrible experience to have somebody do that.
They did not know what was going to happen to them, both in terms of their marching while they were marching, or after they were arrested. They were fearful, particularly after the arrest, because they didn't know what was going to happen. Another kind of fear was an academic fear. They didn't know what was going to happen to them in their classes either.
One of the more favorable incidents that I remember that will always remain in my mind was Lester Maddox's restaurant. I was a driver on that occasion taking students there, and I remember the famous pickaxes and people talking about hitting people on the head with these pickaxes, and he arming his restaurant patrons to give them pickaxes to hit us with was really a very interesting and dangerous experience.
Buses are a-coming, oh yes. Buses are a-coming, buses are a-coming, buses are a-coming, oh yeah.
The purpose of the Freedom Ride was to test the ICC ruling, which was a law, but the South was resistant to that law. And so we were already testing a law that was passed, and through sit-ins, one thing led to another, the Freedom Ride almost came to a screeching halt after the bus was burned in Anderson, Alabama, and Freedom Riders were almost killed.
And I was one of the 13 original Freedom Riders. I was on the bus that was burned in Amsterdam. Well, I knew this was it. If I got off of that bus, and I'm pretty sure other people were thinking the same thing, the mob is going to kill you. And that can be, I know that would be a painful death. If I stayed on, we were going to be burned to death. So I thought, with all of the smoke that's filling up the bus, if I took a deep breath of that smoke, I thought it would put me to sleep, and that was the way I was going to die.
I was the youngest of the original 13 riders. Like we, on our bus, was the youngest and the oldest Freedom Rider. And the oldest Freedom Rider was Dr. Walter Bergman. And when they knocked him to the floor of the bus, they began to stomp him in his chest. Dr. Bergman ended up spending the rest of his life in a wheelchair. And, you know, I could not understand how you could be the youngest person, an 18-year-old and a 62-year-old. I mean, I just wondered what were they thinking, or if they were thinking at all.
It was after we'd been arrested and put in the paddy wagon and taken to the county, the city jail. First we went to the city jail, and then we got later transferred to the county. But it was a big step down out of the paddy wagon, and I'm pretty short. And I was looking like a sweet young Southern thing. And so the policeman just instinctively reached out to help me down from the paddy wagon. And then it was like he suddenly realized I was the dreaded outside agitated prominent, probably a communist, and I was jerked back. But the fact that his first instinct was to do the right thing just gave me hope that in the end, things would work out okay.
Before we even got on the bus, we went into the Greyhound cafeteria, which obviously was still segregated to that extent. And of course, we ordered, and they didn't serve us. And we just sat there for maybe 20 or 30 minutes. And then one of the black guys who was the kitchen help came out of the kitchen, came and told us, first of all, he said, we don't serve you people in here, you know that. And we told him, well, you know, we just gonna sit there. Our bus hadn't left yet, but we'll just sit here. He went back into the kitchen, and then he came back out and said, what do you want? So he took it upon himself as a kitchen help to serve us, you know. And then, of course, after that, we got on the bus and we started our freedom route from Atlanta all the way to Montgomery, where we met up with the mob, the violence and brutality. It was really terrible, really horrible. A lot of people were threatened, a lot of people were hurt.
We made a difference. We really caused a change. I've suggested several times that I wanted to find out, why did it take 100 years since the Emancipation Proclamation through the freedom rides and the sit-ins, for there to be an organized protest? One that was significant, one that had numbers, and believe me, we were students. We had partial educations, if you will, because as with me, my education was interrupted. But the point is, we brought the conscience of the world by our sacrifices, and most of us were youngsters. We didn't have the responsibilities of the older generation. So, because of the publicity that we garnered, we caused change.
The governor of Georgia, who was Lester Maddox, owned a restaurant called The Pickwick. And he stood in the door with an axe and said, no black people will eat in this restaurant, see? And the students protested, and then they went to the Heart of Atlanta motel for rooms, and they wouldn't permit them to come in, and they protested that. And so the Heart of Atlanta filed a suit against the United States government saying that the Civil Rights Act of 1964 did not apply to them. And the court ruled just the reverse. The court said that the 1964 Civil Rights Act applied across the board and throughout America.
Heart of Atlanta Motel was right up the street there where the Hilton Hotel is. And a group of doctors, black doctors and dentists, particularly all their physicians, they went in and into the Hilton, Heart of Atlanta Motel, and
and it was segregated. They got arrested, and Don Hollowell and I defended them, got them out on bond.
Attitude of them against us, us against them. That was in the mind of the segregationists. I'm going to get you black people before you get us. And even if we have to do it through the Ku Klux Klan to terrorize you, we're going to make sure that we keep you down. Booker T. Washington said so eloquently, you can't keep another man or woman down in the ditch without getting down there yourself.
In 1963, shortly after the March on Washington, there was a rally in Hurt Park. Hundreds and hundreds of students and adults showed up, and Martin Luther King Jr. was the chief speaker. But people were ready. People were inspired to continue to push and pull. Atlanta was the little New York, the capital of the South. And Atlanta had to change. Atlanta was ready. It was an enlightened community. It had these segregated places like Richards, and Davidson later became Macy's.
The strategy in nonviolence has a military base to it. We just don't use the force of violence, we use the force of love. Okay? Unconditional love. And we also use a whole strategy of doing psychological warfare. Psychological warfare means that you understand the mindset of your opponent and you begin to operate with that knowledge as well. Because what you're trying to do is do something unusual that would strike the conscience of your opponent.
I wanted to be prepared not to hate, knowing that I was already hated. We needed to go into the demonstration so prepared, so armed spiritually, that we could literally face death, violence, insult, and take the highest moral and spiritual stance that a human being can take.
Like I said, I was born in Great, she was born in Great Hospital, but there was certain there was certain entrances you went in and certain entrances you didn't go in. You know, it was always the side entrance or the back entrance, you know, for the blacks, you know. You coming along during those eras, that was quite an exciting thing. Because I remember as a boy, for 1945, white folks from out East Point brought a black man back with a lid and threw him out the street, said, this is what we do to niggas that mess with our women. The boy had been gone with this girl. When her neighbors found out about it, she hollered rape, and they killed her. And they brought him back to Hunter Street and threw him out there on the ground. So this is what we do to niggas when they mess with our women. You know, it was a normal way for us to, you know, to have fear.
I remember the segregated grades. I remember going in there, signing those, sliding up and down those benches, taking all days to get weight on. I remember people sitting in the aisleways when they couldn't get beds. I remember it.
Grady Memorial Hospital, a segregated place. It was supposed to be a place for healing, help, and hope. But for us, it was a place of horror. And many blacks died before the deadline because they were neglected in the emergency room.
I think the spirituality of the movement was embodied in the songs. That was always the stirring and great moment for somebody pray, pray as always. But the movement of the songs, I think, coalesce the individuals.
See, I'm convinced if it was not for the music, there wouldn't have been a movement. It really was the glue. Our music is the glue that brought us together, that gave us courage. When you start singing songs like Ain't Gonna Let Nobody Turn You Around.
Music was what kept us together and what gave us strength. You know, I remember coming out after 5 days. We'd been arrested in one of the demonstrations in Atlanta around public accommodations. And just feeling really, we'd gone on a fast, energy was low. We tried to keep it up with singing freedom songs in jail, because that was the other thing. They would separate the women from the men, and so sometimes you could hear each other, you would hear the guys singing, you would hear the women singing, back and forth, ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. And we came out of that. Personally, I was really hungry because we had been on a fast for 5 days, And so we come out and we came into this church. I don't remember what church it was. We came out into this church and it was packed. And people were singing, ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. And we walked in, and physically you felt lifted up. You felt like nothing could stop you. Nobody could stop you. And, it just felt you. Free. We are not afraid. We are not afraid today.
The music was fantastic. The music was just wonderful. The music was the thing that gave you, that made you want to walk, and made you want to march. And we shall overcome, holding hands and rocking. We'll side, we shall all be free. We'll walk hand in hand, walking from side to side, and just looking. When you see people now, and you see them now, you haven't seen them in a long time, you keep talking, people say, oh, you are that way? Yes, you are. Girl, how you doing? And you grab and hug. Even, so many of us now, I'm 78, so many of us now are gone. But when you do see now, it's just like it was yesterday. You reconnect. We shall overcome someday. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we'll walk hand in hand someday. Oh my goodness, will you take me back? Thank you so much.
Historical church. Amen. We have some huge shoes to fill. I would be remiss if I stood here and I made remarks when we got the great-grandson of the late and great Reverend Dr. Bond sitting in with us, and I'd rather give him the mic and allow him to make these last remarks, and then we'll bring Ms. Boone up. Amen. Could you put your hands together one more time for the honorable Dr. Bond?
Well, thank you, Reverend. I appreciate the opportunity. So I am the great-grandson of the Reverend, but I don't want to get struck by lightning here. But I'm very pleased that you all like the film. These are actually an example of some of the clips that you will see when you go and scan the markers. And we're actually negotiating with PBA to put it in more of a more refined form of a documentary, because this is just a sample. Like I said, we interviewed over 110 plus people. So we've got many, many more hours of content that we're going to try to bring before the public, so people can see it and know this story. You know, I grew up right here in this community. Was born over on Drummond Street. Our house was over on Yearly Street. Now the Purdue dorm occupies that space. But of course, grew up in Pascals, hearing these stories growing up. And one of the things that struck me was that so many people participated and had a story to tell that needed to be heard. Because first of all, we go to any history book. African American history is truncated at best. But our story is the American story. It is the soul of the American spirit. And so we need to bring that forward and have everyone be educated about what has gone on. Because many of the ails that plague our community is because we don't know ourselves. We don't know from whence we've come, or we have forgotten, we've selectively forgotten. But we are called as a people to a higher moral purpose in this country. I really do believe that. And this place, this space, the gospel that's preached here has a unique filter when it comes to the African American experience in the United States. So with that, I'm just very pleased that you all enjoyed it. I hope that you will take it with you. If anybody wants to link, it's not, the city owns it, but I don't mind sharing the link with anybody who wants to see it and use it, because it's for the public. And with that, just thank you again. It's always a pleasure to be here at Rush in my original neighborhood where I grew up. So I'm very, very pleased to be here with you. And thank you for allowing me to share your Black history experience. Thank you very much.
Amen, amen. Listen, we get ready to, because it's been a long day, I know you all want to eat, and we've got food next door. They put a spread out, okay? So make sure that before you leave, you at least go fix a plate.
Sir, there's a candidate here.
Oh, we've got a candidate who? Here.
Brown.
Ricky Brown.
A member of Rush Memorial.
A member of
Amen. Oh, stand up, Ricky. All right. All right. Amen. 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 Thank you. Amen. Amen. We wanted to make sure that we get next door. But I want to make sure I give any announcements. So we've got Elder Griffin here to do announcements. Elder, do we have any announcements, sir?
Well, you just shared the most important one.
Sir?
I said, you just shared the most important one, that there's food next door.
I done stole this thunder again.
But other than that, we have Sunday school each Sunday morning at 9:45, morning worship service at 11 o'clock. Choir rehearsal on Thursday evenings at 7 o'clock. So we invite you to come back again and worship with us. But most of all today, don't forget to stop over at the Josie Boone Fellowship Hall for refreshment and fellowship fun.
Amen. Thank you, sir. Thank you. And now, without further ado, the woman that actually put this program together, we want to make sure we honor her, Miss Alethea Boone. We want to. Amen. 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 Please don't leave out when she does the presentations, because we are taking up offering. We just want to give before we get, all right? But listen, the reason you all are being able to be comfortable in the seats that you sit in and the lights being on is because we have money to pay bills. It takes you all to give us that money to be able to pay the bills, okay? Amen.
Amen. Thank you all so very, very, very much for being here and in the order of time. I do want to
thank the people who participated for me with this certificate of appreciation. Will you please come down for a photo shoot, okay? Ms. Maxine Harlan. Mr. David, Mrs. Rosalind Coleman, Ms. Kimberly McKinney, Ms. Gail Cook, and Mr. Carlton Bates, our doctor for the day. Yeah, we see that.
Y'all, can you take your certificates, please? No, we're going to give them to them.
Okay.
So they can look at each other.
Next.
I'm your friend.
Okay, David W. Ross.
Good, very good. Could you change places with that? Absolutely. You just come a little closer to that. Come a little closer. Looking good, looking good down close. We're going to take several pictures, so just keep your show your tooth if you have it. Keep up. I'm sorry, run, excuse me. So this way, show your teeth, think up to you like this, just don't say it. You've been doing it in church. Just do that down. Okay, good. Two more, I'll leave you alone. Big one. Somebody say one at a time. One. Okay, here we go. Thank you. You did good.
Thank you. And now the Honorable Michael Bond, please. There's so much that I could say I will not say. I know you all wish I'd hurry up, but it says, presented to council.
Could you come over here and sing so we can get that over there?
Presented to Councilman Michael Julian Bond, Post 1 at Large, on this Black History Observance. It says, in appreciation for your dedicated service as a guardian of the civil and human rights, by helping to make America's promise of freedom and democracy a reality for all humanity, we hereby salute you. First Memorial Church, Michael Malcolm, pastor, with your broom chair.
Very good, very good. Yeah, hold it up, yeah. That's good. See, this is not the first time. See, you got it in the photo. You got somewhere to take a photo. You know what to do. That's good. So we're going to take several more. Close the eyes. Okay, here we go. Wait a minute. Try to look friendly. Hold on. Try to look friendly. Don't talk. Look this way, please. Why is he making all them moves? You right. You're doing right. I just want you to be still. Look at the camera. They rock you like this. Woo, Lord, take one cheese. We don't move. You gotta take a bunch like this one picture. When you got a bunch of close. Somebody close their eyes and listen to the whole thing. Show you two, you brought it. Show it. One more, I'll leave it on. You did good.
Thank you. You're not going to. Yes. But this ain't tight. I need you to take orders from me for a second.
Okay.
Where's Elder Griffin? And Mrs. Finkland is next door right now. She's making it good for us. But we want to make sure we honor you. Yeah, somebody already started. beat for the wet noodle. There. All right. Yeah. On behalf of Rush Church, we want to make sure we.
Come on up here, man, because you're going to help pay for this. Come on up.
We want to make sure we honor you on today, okay? And this is the Lord that we gave you. We've also gave you gifts. Whatever you want to do.
That's what he meant when he said,
right, that's what I said. Right.
Come close, real close. Now I want you to hold the flower. Give me the hold. Just one hand, just one hand. Yeah, underneath. There you go. Oh, boy, you're doing it. No, that ain't good. There you go. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Come in real close. We're done. Put the flower down a little bit. Now I want you to hold, okay, like you present them to us. Yeah, no, that's good. We're done. We're done enough. We're going to take you right. Now drop your head down. Right there. Yeah. Look this way, Travis Friendly.
Anybody want pictures, let me know.
Thank you. Travis Friendly. Don't move. Try to look at television. You can't. Don't move. One more, leave it on. Pretty smart, huh? Drop your head just a little bit, good. Sir, could you turn your head this way? Turn it, now tilt towards her. There you go. Now you drop your head a little bit. That's, we all look to television. Would you stand up straight, please? Perfect. You want to lean in. Stand up straight. You perfect. Don't move. You're going to take two now because we did that. One more. Show you two. Man, you did good. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, Mr. Brown.
Thank you.
Yeah, we can put flowers down, right? You can't hit it.
Yes, post a large.
You want a picture too? Want this picture too?
Andrea, you come to us?
Andrea.
Come on, Andrea.
Yeah, lady, turn the other way from the man. So you can look friendly. That's it. Yeah, turn in. Turn in. Good. Right now, both of them get going. Turn place. We'll do a high thing. Yeah. Nah, you got it. Look for you. Just don't say nothing. Drop your head a little bit. Drop your head. Turn your head. No. Oh, good now. Okay, turn the other way, sir. And tilt to the front. Tilt. Okay, that's it, though. That's good. Come closer. It's a big gap between you and her. Okay, oh, that's good. You drop your head. I can see glare in your glasses. Drop your head. You drop your head. Okay, good. Everybody look this way. Try to look at each other. I mean, Frank. Who first? Who goes you first? That don't make it complicated. I'm like, shoot first. Why you think you're going to take this? Don't make a shoot on. Okay, good. Orchestrate. Okay, look this way. Okay, one more, I'll leave you alone. Bam! Y'all did good.
Yeah, we have taken up the offering. So here's what I'll do. I'm going to have them sit the tray right here because we need to get going so we can go eat. I don't know about you all, but at this point I'm swallowing and my stomach's saying thank you. So we need to go ahead. We're going to put a tray right here. If you would, just come and please drop your offering off for us, okay?
And if you give by the way of Cash App, the Cash App is the Rush UCC.
Amen. If you're giving with the Cash App, if you want to give Cash App, you can go to the Rush UCC, $, the Rush UCC, and it'll bring it up for you, okay? All right. Listen, here's what I need all of us to do. We're going to all stand up and form a circle, if we will, and we're going to go out today. Our dismissal is going to be the song, We Shall Overcome. But what I want you all to do